Hi, everyone. My advocacy project is on caring for children who have experienced domestic violence. So, defining the issue of domestic violence in children that have experienced that, there are different types of abuse, such as emotional, sexual, verbal, physical, and financial abuse. And according to the CDC, in houses where there is domestic violence between parents or other adults in the house, there is up to 60% chance of children experiencing domestic violence as well, and also in the future. Even if the child is just hearing the violence happening or witnessing the violence happening, the children are still victims and it can leave the child with a lot of unresolved trauma. It is important for child welfare workers to be able to identify these issues and understand them so they can better help the children and their families. And according to Child Welfare Information Gateway, it is important for child welfare workers to use different interventions that will keep the child safe, but also while strengthening the families. And it's also important to make sure the family is included in creating relationships with the providers and also the decision making process. So, who is affected and how? According to an article by Michigan.gov, there is around 10 million children every year who are being exposed and experiencing domestic violence. There are multiple symptoms that these children can experience, such as behavioral, physical, social, and emotional. Emotional symptoms can look like a child having anxiety, fear, feelings of humiliation, feelings of loneliness, and there are times where the child may feel like they are the one to blame for the violence happening to them. Behavioral systems can look like a child not being able to sleep, um, increased acts of aggression and destructive behavior, possibly lying, and different issues in school. And this can also possibly lead to substance abuse. Physical symptoms can look like wetting the bed, recurring illnesses, stomach issues and headaches, and digestive issues. Social symptoms can look like isolation from their peers. Uh, Children may not trust adults, um, such as teachers or other family members or friends, and they may partake in violence and have unhealthy relationships down the road. So, looking at the cause of the issue, there's not just one cause of domestic violence. And it's important to know that domestic violence is not the victim's fault. And it is the abuser's choice to partake in those actions and do those things. And there may be warning signs that can possibly lead to domestic violence, such as personality disorders, substance abuse disorders, issues with anger management. But just because people have these issues does not mean that they will partake in domestic violence and become an abuser. For a child growing up in a household with domestic violence, that child may grow up believing that that is what a healthy and normal relationship looks like, and possibly may partake in those violent behaviors and may possibly treat other people like that as well. This is not always the case, but if that's all they see at home, this is what they may do in the future. And at times, domestic violence does not always happen right away. People will act normal to try and gain a child or an adult's trust, and then they may abuse them down the road. And it's a way for the abuser to have control and power over that child or adult. So my solution would be to advertise different things in school. This could be from preschool to all the way to senior of high school, and advertise things such as what domestic violence is and how it's wrong, what the warning signs are, and that there are ways to get help, and how it is not the child's fault that domestic abuse is happening to them. I think it's really important that children in school receive this information, um, and have information on possible different support groups in their area and therapy that could help not only them but their family as well if they're experienced domestic violence. If children know that there's a safe space at school, and if they are experiencing domestic violence, they may feel comfortable enough to go to a teacher that they feel safe with, or their counselor, report it and get some help for them and their family. And I think it's also important to possibly put a program in school that takes the time to explain to these kids what the warning signs of domestic violence is, and different ways to reach out for help if they're in that situation, and also what a healthy relationship looks like. Providing a prevention program like this in schools could potentially help a lot of students in future relationships, and it could even save a life and help that child down the road realize what domestic violence is, and if they are possibly in a bad relationship or are experiencing domestic violence, and get out of that situation. And the Child Welfare Information Gateway website has multiple resources about treatments and different prevention programs for domestic violence. And the domestic violence hotline also has a lot of different resources that could help these people, children and adults as well. And these are my resources. And thank you for taking the time to look through my presentation.